Hey everybody, what's happening? I hope you guys are doing well. August 7th on the morning Devo with Beau, and we are going to be in Acts 18 today. Acts 18. And my name's Beau. I'd love to go through the Bible. I grew up not going through the Bible. And unfortunately, sometimes we get brought up a particular way where we kind of criticize a book or books, in this case, of the Bible, but we're not really knowing why we criticize it, right? We just tend to criticize it. And I certainly did that with the Bible. It wasn't until I was about 17 years old that I actually started reading the Bible from the book of Genesis and just started going, just reading it. Just really to read it, find out what it's all about. Super blown away. I had my friend Dan Sabellis with me, another friend. Oh man, we had a great time. I remember us sitting in Dan Sabellis's bedroom, opening up our Bibles and just reading and just kind of underlining and reading. And man, learning so much. Definitely were involved in reggae culture, skate culture, growing up, surf culture, metal music culture, all kinds of music, just very fun upbringing out in SoCal. A lot of experiences for sure. And, but just reading through the Bible really changed my life. So I love to read through the Bible. A lot of people, again, like to critique, and we tend to be very good at critiquing. I don't know if you have noticed that in your life yet, but human beings tend to be pros. Man, we can critique like no other, and we can rationalize our behavior like no other. And, we just are a mess in a lot of ways. You think you're doing right, but you're not doing right. And then when you say right, that means there's a wrong. And where do you get your right from? Where do you get your wrong from? Where do you get your ideas from? It's very important. A lot of times in our world today, we critique things that we really don't understand the ideology that's behind it. Therefore, I'm also doing a reading of the Quran. For those that have never read the Quran, this would be very interesting for you. It's just on my YouTube channel. Go to Beau. It's right there in the top left-hand corner. YouTube, Beau, or you can go to beauwillette.com. Even though I haven't put it on my beauwillette.com yet site, I really got a link to it there, but you can certainly get to my devotions through the Bible on beauwillette.com. Okay, so that's enough of me. Acts 18. This is the Devo with Beau. Let's get into it. It's a beautiful morning. It's going to be a hot, hot day. Wow. It's going to be a scorcher. So I guess the trick is to don't go outside if you're in Arizona. California weather, what's that like right now? Francisco, what's it like out there? Oh, give it to us. Is it like, 80 maybe? We would love that. I think we're going to get to about 100 and I'm gonna look at right here. What is it going to be today? 114. That's what mine says. 114 today. Oh, okay. Acts 18. Then Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he became acquainted with a Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently arrived from Italy with his wife Priscilla. Whoa, that's cool. Man, they had, just got back from Italy. And it says they had left Italy when Claudius Caesar deported all Jews from Rome. So you take it that Priscilla and Aquila were Jews and living in Italy at the time. Very cool. You might go, wow, how did this all happen? Well, remember, the Jewish people have been, in a sense, dispersed over many hundreds of years. You have the Assyrian Empire that came in. You have then a return to the land after the Babylonian captivity. And then you have the persecutions under the Grecian Empire. And then you have the occupation of the Roman Empire. And then you have another dispersion after the Roman Empire. So you have a lot of opportunity for people from Israel, the land of Israel, to be dispersed all over. It's very interesting that Israel never really got its land back until officially 1948. Isn't that amazing? It took a long time for Israel to get its land back. So long that most people on college campuses don't remember. They don't know. They don't know the history. They think Israel is like an occupier of their land, which is really weird, right? Because when we read the Bible, Israel has been Israel for a long time, thousands of years in that land. But they were dispersed and from the Roman time, from the time of Jesus, this time right here that we're reading about, they were dispersed for close to 2,000 years. And then 1948, and after the Holocaust, there was an arrangement that Israel can have its land back, and it would be divided up, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that created a lot of issues for today. But a lot of people forget that Israel, that's been their land for a long, long time. So anyway, Priscilla, Aquila, they're from, Israel, but they have been in Italy. So Francisco says it's 81, mostly sunny, but we will reach 98. Ooh, that's brutal out there. Oh, so SoCal and at 98, 100 degrees. I can remember on 4th Street where I lived, I don't remember us ever having air conditioning at all, or swamp coolers at that. I don't remember anything other than ceiling fans. So I'm sure by now, hopefully they got AC units in these places. But it was just windows, doors open, screen door. We didn't, front door, you had a screen door. And then, that's it. Take off your shirt, So it says they had left Italy when Claudius Caesar deported all the Jews from Rome. Okay, Paul lived and worked with them, for they were tent makers just as he was. So Paul was a tent maker. He worked with his hands, and he was good at it, obviously. And Priscilla and Aquila did this as well in making a living. So it's neat that Paul earned a living. He was a guy who worked hard. It's kind of a good reminder to me to work hard with what I can do, different talents I have, different abilities I can to make money, earn money. It says each Sabbath found Paul at the synagogue. Again, this is where Paul tended to go. Why? Because he could be accepted there. He was a ex-Pharisee. So he tried to convince the Jews and the Greeks alike. And after Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia, Paul spent all of his time preaching the word. He testified to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. So this was the preaching. The idea of preaching is proclaiming. What was the proclamation? That Jesus is the fulfillment of our books. That's what it is. So Jesus is the fulfillment of our books, Genesis to the book of Malachi, all speaking of a common redeeming that is throughout all of them, the redemption, right? The thread of redemption, that there would be a son born and he would crush Satan, this whole idea. This is what Paul taught. And he says, but when they opposed him and insulted him, he shook the dust from his clothes and said, your blood is upon your own heads. I am innocent. From now on, I will go and preach to the Gentiles. Hey, You don't want it? You don't want it? Then I'm going to go to the Gentiles. Now, this is, I think, very similar to even the life of Christ and the ministry of Jesus, where Jesus went to Israel first. Remember, he talked to the lady from Tyre, and he said, hey, I've come for the lost sheep of Israel. But we see that he also ministered to Gentiles as well, especially when those lost sheep of Israel, right? Those people of Israel rejected. Jesus definitely, certainly didn't just minister to Jews alone. And Paul, does this too. He goes to his own people, if you will. He goes into the synagogue, places that he's familiar. What are you familiar with? What are places that are familiar to you? That's kind of your wheelhouse. The place that you can go and you can, kind of, you have the lay of the land, so to speak. The drill. Kind of how to move within that environment. Well, man, that's the environment that you can really go in and reach and share. And it says, then he left and went home to the house of Titius Justus, a Gentile who worshipped God and lived next door to the synagogue. Oh, that must have been interesting for the synagogue people, right? Oh man, Paul just went across the street to Titius Justus's home. Crispus, the leader of the synagogue, and everyone in his household believed in the Lord. Many others in Corinth also heard Paul and became believers and were baptized. Now, this is a big deal. The leader of the synagogue. I mean, man, it's amazing when, you share and someone who has some clout in the town, in the synagogue, in the place, really comes to the faith in Jesus. It must have been a big deal. Something where news would travel pretty fast. Sometimes someone I remember growing up and Evander Holyfield, the boxer, became a Christian. And I remember that was like a big deal, man, Evander Holyfield's like a believer in Jesus kind of thing. And it tends to be kind of a mind blower when, people that are famous, give their life to Jesus, can really rock people's world. It says, one night the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision and told him, don't be afraid, speak out, don't be silent, for I am with you. And no one will attack and harm you, for many people in the city belong to me. Now notice how this works is the Lord comes to him in a vision. It's not something that he's quite, is he asleep? Is he awake? It's a vision. And it's one that deals with his fear. Hey, don't be afraid. I think that's a vision we a lot of times need from the Lord, of something that says, hey, don't be afraid. I'm with you. Be of good courage. Joshua chapter 1, right? That idea. Because it's fear grips us so much. Hey, I'm afraid. And Paul's already had a lot of trial, a lot of persecution. I mean, people coming after him. And he says, hey, don't be afraid. A lot of times today on the internet, you can get a lot of, kind of people that don't like you. And, I could hear the Lord saying to people, hey, don't be afraid. Keep sharing. And so Paul stays there for the next year and a half teaching the word. Again, sometimes we think of Paul's ministry and we think it's like a boom, boom, boom. It's like kind of a, shotgun, joo, joo, joo ministry. But no, Paul really wanted to stay in places. Remember, he was already in Antioch where he stayed there, him and Barnabas, for a year. And they taught him the word of God. And he went to another place. He wanted to stay there for time. And here now for another year. He really wanted to make disciples, really teach, help people understand the Bible that they had, which was the Old Testament, and understand how it relates to the Messiah. And again, that's the big theme of the Bible, is the Messiah. If you have a faith without the Messiah, then what kind of Redeemer do you have? That's the big question. Who is your Redeemer? Who is the one who does it for you? Who's the one who can, you be your example? This is the Messiah. He's the one who does it for us. He's the one who is our example. He's the one who will see us to the end. And it says, for when Gallio became governor of Achaia, some Jews rose up together against Paul and brought him before the governor for judgment. They accused Paul of persuading people to worship God in ways that are contrary to our law. So another government comes into power, and then Paul, they go after Paul. So this happens in our day too. Another government gets elected, and then maybe, the church is not going to be as safe as it once was. Maybe there's going to be a persecution, right? Because a different governor is in place who's not very favorable to the church. So this is not something new. This is something very old. It's funny, people are always saying they're tolerant. I know I grew up and always said, hey, oh man, I'm open-minded, I'm tolerant. But I was only really open-minded and tolerant to the things that I wanted to be tolerant about. If you really went against any of my views, then I wasn't very tolerant at all. I became very narrow-minded. So it's interesting, none of us are very open-minded. We all tend to be only tolerant of things that we really want to be tolerant of. But when there's something that really goes against what we think, or our behavior, we tend to shut it down. And if we have a place of power that we can shut something down, we usually do. You might be a person who criticizes the government for doing this kind of thing. And certainly there's a place for that, for sure. But when you look at your own life, you see that at times you want to shut down argument as well, meaning you want to shut down speech as well. Because you might not feel comfortable with that speech, or you might not like it, or it might offend you. And so you want to shut down that speech as well. And so that same kind of shutting down, people, is something that resides in all of us. Governments are made up of people. And so here we see this is what's going on. But just as Paul started to make his defense, Gallio turned to Paul's accusers and said, listen, you Jews, if you were a case involving some wrongdoing or a serious crime, I would have a reason to accept your case. But since it is merely a question of words and names and your Jewish law, take care of it yourselves. I refuse to judge such matters, and he threw them out of the courtroom. Hey, man, there's like the ancient separation of church and state here. Man, you guys gotta deal with your doctrines. I'm not like, this court is not set up to deal with your theological doctrines, and he goes, you guys want to squabble, the Jewish people, then you guys go squabble, but not in the court. I love that, Galileo's a smart guy, right? He's just like, I'm not going there. And that's some wisdom, right? There's sometimes, you have to be wise of when to not go into that battle, especially when you got some people that are just squabbling with one another. Boy, you get people talking about Donald Trump nowadays, and it's unbelievable, right? People go at it. I mean, do you know what Donald Trump did? He's locking up everybody. He's blah, 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 blah. And then you talk to the conservatives, and they're like, no, Donald Trump he's great. He's like a messiah, man. He's like God sent. He's like, this kind of thing. And they just go at each other, man. It's unbelievable. Everybody's got their sources. Everybody's got their news networks. Everybody's got their, their articles to bring up, their facts, their stats, their, everything. Every side's got their stuff. Whew, man, I want to be like Gallio. Hey, you guys just go over there and you guys talk about it yourselves, right? Man, I can't figure that out. I haven't hung out with Donald Trump. I haven't hung out with Gavin Newsom. I haven't hung out with people. I don't know them. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not true. There's a lot of stuff out there that people think are true every day that are just not true. I mean, we just went through 5 years of some crazy stuff going on in our government, right? Shutting down everything, people getting fired, people not able to have jobs anymore, people, can't even be in the military. I mean, we had all kinds of crazy stuff going down, ramifications that are still happening now, people having health problems and blah, 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 blah. And still people deny. No. And just, it's right. It's just, okay, Gallio says, hey, you guys go over there and you guys discuss your theology. The crowd then grabbed Sosthenes, the leader of the synagogue, and beat him right there in the courtroom, but Gallio paid no attention. Whoa! The synagogue leader, Sosthenes, was literally beat up in front of Gallio, and Gallio just let it go. Just, hey, you guys do what you got to do. Do what you want to do. Unbelievable. I'm sure he was, allowing things that people would agree with, so it favored him as a governor. But, that's how power works, right? It sometimes is very much allowing things that it deems okay when it's not really okay. So you really see that, power structures, everything's really the same way as today, isn't it? Paul stayed in Corinth for some time after that, then said goodbye to the brothers and sisters and went to nearby Centria. And there he shaved his head according to the Jewish custom, marking the end of a vow. So in the Nazirite vow, you would grow your hair. And remember, growing hair wasn't abnormal. People had long hair. Certain cultures had short hair, but a lot of times hair would be grown out, especially in certain Jewish activities like being a Nazirite. It was like a certain particular vow that you would make unto the Lord, and you wouldn't cut your hair. Your hair would be really long. So the idea of cut your hair, that kind of thing, your hair's long, that's a really weird thing in our United States history. It's probably something that we got from the European world, the shorter hair kind of thing. But it's not that in the Jewish world you would have part of your hair short, part of your hair long. Remember, they were to not cut their sides. The sides of their hairs were to be locks. Unbelievable. And you read many characters in the Bible who had very long hair. And so that wasn't abnormal. Here at the end of this vow, Paul shaves his head, and kind of as an offering unto the Lord, there's this idea here. And it was the Jewish custom at the end of the vow to shave your head. And it says, then he set sail for Syria, taking Priscilla and Aquila with him. And so his hair was kind of representative of kind of where he was at in his spiritual journey. Isn't that cool? It's like there was something in his hair. He grew his hair long. They knew he was on a Nazirite vow. He cut his hair. He knew it was the end of that vow. Those kind of things. I think that's fascinating. I find that pretty cool. I kind of go through that myself. I'll go grow my hair a little bit. And it's usually something, it's something spiritual with me. Something that, I'm thinking about the Lord. And then at times I'll cut it. And, but it's, I don't know if you ever think that way about even your hair, just kind of bringing that before the Lord. But this was a Jewish custom, and it says they stopped first at the port of Ephesus, where they left the others behind. And while he was there, he went into the synagogue to reason with the Jews. Hey, Pete and repeat, we're in a boat. It says they asked him to stay longer, but he declined. And as he left, however, he said, I will come back later, God willing. Then he set sail from Ephesus. The next stop was at the point of Caesarea. From there, he went up and visited the church at Jerusalem, and then went back to Antioch. And so people wanted him to stay in Ephesus, but he had to take off. So he goes back and he visits in the church in Jerusalem, and then he went back to Antioch. And after spending some time in Antioch, Paul went back through Galatia and Phrygia, visiting and strengthening all the believers. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, an eloquent speaker who knew the scriptures well, had arrived in Ephesus from Alexandria in Egypt. Now, Alexandria in Egypt is really cool that it's mentioned because it was a famous place. If you look at the history of Alexandria in Egypt, you'll find there's a rich, rich scholarly history there. Very cool. And so Apollos is from there, and he had been taught the way of the Lord, as he taught others about Jesus with an enthusiastic spirit and with accuracy. However, he knew only about John's baptism, and when Priscilla and Aquila heard him preaching boldly in the synagogue, they took him aside and explained the way of God even more accurately. Now, I love this because do I have a heart today to want to explain the way of God even more accurately? I mean, it's a beautiful kind of idea, right? Instead of being contentious with people, maybe think of explaining the way of God more accurately with people. Hey, I just want to explain, what Jesus said. I want to explain what this meant. To be able to bring clarity to the teachings of Jesus is really, really cool. And even though this guy Aquila was already, very scholarly himself, he only really knew of John's ministry. The ministry, the idea of the baptism of John is the immersion of John, being underneath John as your teacher, your rabbi. And so, to now be able to hear about Jesus and to hear about the work of Jesus must have been very cool, because John pointed to this person. John the Baptist pointed to Jesus and said, hey, one that is coming after me. But for some reason, Aquila never was able to get that. Maybe he only had a short stay in Jerusalem. Maybe he only had a short stay and he heard John and he went, yes, man, we are waiting for the Messiah. That's right. That's what our Bible's all about, is the Messiah, man. We got to wait for the Messiah. And then he had to go back home or go back to where he was. So Apollos had been thinking about going to Achaia, and the brothers and sisters in Ephesus encouraged him to go. They wrote to the believers in Achaia asking them to welcome him. And when he arrived there, he proved to be of great benefit to those who, by God's grace, had believed. He refuted the Jews with powerful arguments in public debate. Using the scriptures, he explained to them that Jesus was the Messiah. So this has been repeated over and over and over in the book of Acts. The idea that what they did in their preaching and in their teaching within the local congregations was literally explaining the Bible that they had, the Old Testament, and showing them Jesus threaded throughout it, starting from Genesis, going all the way through to Malachi, just showing the work of Messiah through it all, who the Messiah would be, where the Messiah would be born, what line would the Messiah come from? How would we know when the Messiah would come? It must have been great Bible studies in the book of Daniel, Zechariah, Isaiah. I mean, it must have just been Micah. It must have been mind-blowing, right? To be under these guys, just hearing them break down these books that they knew so well, but now they saw it in light of, oh my God, yeah, the Messiah. That's what these books are about. That's what it's all about. And notice too that Apollos was a dude who was eloquent in public debate. He could debate with the Jewish people. Those Jewish people that back in Corinth were fighting, Paul and, in the court of Galileo, that whole thing. These Jews that were so antagonistic towards Paul and the other Jewish believers. Here, Apollos, now, God has raised him up to be a eloquent debater. Talk about perfect timing, right? And I'm sure Paul was like, man, I love this Apollos guy. This guy rocks, dude. I can just set him up here. And, when the guys who are against me, when the Jews that are against me, talk to me, I could say, hey, debate Apollos. And Apollos loved to just get in the word. There's some people, this is the beautiful thing about church, man. You go to church and there's some people that they're just digging all the time. They're just in the word all the time. They're like, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but da, 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 da. Yeah, but da, da, da. Oh, I love that. They're just, man, they're really digging. They're really in the word. It's just great, to have those. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody's, the Apollos, the guy who's, can debate publicly. But it's cool to see that. It's great to have those debaters. I mean, I'm really thankful for them, that they can just do that publicly and, make sense of it all. But notice that they're using the scriptures. Jesus isn't a New Testament concept. That's wrong. Christianity doesn't start in the New Testament. Those are all weird sayings. No, these people are all using the Hebrew Bible to prove Jesus. Because if you just have the Hebrew Bible, everything's in there. His name, where he would be born, when he would be born, what town he would be born in, where he would minister, just the whole thing, man, is in there. It's just you got to read it. And that's what they're doing, explaining it, reading it and explaining it. So that's why we do what we do on the devotion, and we just go through these books of the Bible just to help you guys understand it a little better, to bring some clarity to it, to try to explain and let you see the Messiah threaded throughout these books. That's really the whole point. That's the drive of all of it. And so that ends our day of Acts 18. So a lot of cool sharing of the faith in here. Maybe, you will have an opportunity to share your faith or just bring clarity to someone, or to explain, what the Bible is about. Hey, what is the Bible about? That's a great question. What is the Bible about? It is about the Messiah. Simply put, that's literally what it's about. It's about the Messiah. Okay, you guys have a great one. Patty, I'm going to try to stay cool. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.